On this week's Eastern Conference edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, one of the streakiest teams in the league this season, the Detroit Red Wings, are on a complete spiral. Do they still have a chance to rebound? And which Eastern Conference teams got the best reinforcements after the NHL trade deadline? That's all coming up on this week's edition of the Locked On NHL podcast. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome inside another edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are free and available on all podcast platforms, including on YouTube, where a like, comment, and subscription go a long way to helping the show grow. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. I'm Ross Levitan. You can find me 5 days a week over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. And as always, I'm joined by my provincial rival from the heart of Toronto. It's Mike DiStefano. You can find him over at Locked On Maple Leafs. Today is Wednesday, March 13th. And Mikey, the Leafs are always busy at the trade deadline. Even if it's depth, it must be fun.
Yeah, I mean, they're a team that's always in the mix, or have been for the last, in this Matthews Marner era at the very least. They've been in the mix, looking to upgrade their squad, and, they didn't make any big-time additions. It definitely wasn't last season where they completely overturned, I think it was a third of their roster at the deadline and brought in big pieces like, Ryan O'Reilly and Jake McCabe. A little more periphery stuff from Toronto this time around, but I think that was pretty much the theme of the Eastern Conference. I mean, there really wasn't a whole lot of big time moves that was made out east. I think outside of the Hurricanes, no one really picked up anyone of significance. You could maybe look at the Wenberg deal in New York and say, hey, that could be a big time ad. Tarasenko, I guess, is a nice little addition for the Florida Panthers, but outside of those trades, it seemed like all the big time guys, all the action was pretty much out west.
Yeah, exactly. It was an arms race out west. Like I keep saying, those 2-3 matchups in the Western Conference in the first round, there you could tell me any combination of what they're going to be outside of maybe LA, even if they sneak into a top 3 spot at the end of the day. Vegas for me is going to be in one of those, but those 2-3 matchups could very well have been the Western Conference final. When you're looking at any combination of Edmonton, Vegas as a potential, I think Vancouver's probably got the Pacific locked up. But in the Central, Winnipeg, Dallas, and Colorado, all 3 of those teams, one's guaranteed out in the first round. So you can see why they're all adding pieces, because they don't want to be that team. Whereas in the Eastern Conference, I mean, it's probably fair to say at this point, last year's reigning Eastern Conference champion is the team to beat. The Florida Panthers they're beating you in every different way possible. Last night, they came back down 2 goals in the third period in Dallas, a tough building to win in, and scored 3 goals in less than 4 minutes to win that game in regulation. Tarasenko's up on the first line playing with Sasha Barkov and Sam Reinhart. They've got depth, they've got everything, and they've also got that mean streak that you need come postseason. But we just saw that Aaron Ekblad has been ruled out for a little while. I mean, it's not going to be the classic LTIR that we hear from Vegas and creating cap. Obviously, we're past the deadline. But is it a situation with you where you just keep him out till game 1 of the playoffs, maybe get him a test drive for the last couple of games of the season?
Yeah, like that's probably what I would do. I think so. The report is out at least 2 weeks with a lower body injury, and I would imagine that he gets a couple of games at least just to get himself back up to game speed. Lower body injury, so you think he's probably not going to be skating a whole lot throughout the course of this injury just to kind of rest it up and recover. So you'd want to make sure that he's ready to go for when the pace of the game really speeds up come playoff time. So I would think after a couple of weeks, maybe if you want to hold him out one more week to be safe, but that last, 4 or 5 games of the season, I think you let him go and get himself back into midseason form, or I guess it'd be into playoff form at that point, so that he's really ready to go and 100% playing at his top level come game one of the playoffs.
As we know, he also missed the first month of the season recovering from off-season surgery and went pointless in his first 5 games and was ramping it up slowly with the time on ice. So in a perfect world, yeah, you don't just plop him into the first round of the playoffs, man. What
That's
a team, though. Are they your team to beat in the East right now?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they're currently atop of the leaderboard in the entire league, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of
3
like
points clear.
points. And it's actually unbelievable because you look at how they started the season. It's not that they started decently, but then they really hit a stride around Christmas, and they've been just the best team in hockey really since then. Matt Kachuk started off a little bit of a slower start to the year, but he's been unbelievable since Christmas. You look at the year that Sam Reinhart is having. Defensively, they were without not just Aaron Ekblad, but also Brandon Montour for the first 2 months of the season, and somehow they got through it. They went through it. Gus Forsling stepped up massive. He got a big contract extension last week as well. Very well deserved. The NHL's plus minus leader, I might add, at like plus 46 or something like that. It's absurd. They're just a well-rounded team, man. Like top to bottom, 1 through 4 lines, first pair through third pair. And look, when Bobrovsky's on his game, like he's a top 5 goaltender in the world. So, and he's been that really ever since the playoffs from last year. And he's rolled it into this season where he's playing some pretty good hockey. So that's a tough team to beat, man. And they're built for the playoffs. We clearly saw that last year. And they got the taste of the cup final. They definitely want to make sure that, or do their best to make sure that they can maybe this time taste the actual Stanley Cup this time and be drinking beers out of that bad boy come July.
If they do win the Eastern Conference, they're going to get one of the wild card teams. We'll discuss after the break what these wild card teams are looking like, because Detroit, we thought they had a leg up on the competition, but now they've lost 6 games in a row. Before we get to that, though, Igor Shesterkin is all the way back.
Oh, yeah.
Back-to-back shutouts for Shesterkin. Now, there was a point in the season where Rangers fans were posting and making articles. Who starts game 1 of the playoffs? Is it Igor Shesterkin or Jonathan Quick? And with all due respect to the tremendous borderline Hall of Fame career, you could probably even say Hall of Fame career for Jonathan Quick. 2-time Cup champ, great career in LA. He's been playing great this season in New York, but Igor Shesterkin is one of the best goalies in the league. Yeah, he had a bit of a rough patch, but it's great to see. I know you and I are always kind of keeping an eye on the New York Rangers. So he gets the 4-0 shutout over St. Louis, then goes into Carolina, always a tough place to play, and holds them to just nothing. But they only got 1 goal. So it was one of those classic goalie showdowns that I love so much. And man, when he's on his game, like top 2 goalie in the league, top 1.
He's the goalie in the league. Like he's the number 1 goaltender in the NHL when he's at the top of his game. I think you can get into the conversation, I guess, Vasilevsky, but the year that he's having, Hellebuck is right there as well. I think those are probably, you're going to look at as the 3 goalies. Sorokin's a guy you could throw in there. Thatcher Demko, the season he's having, you could throw him in there as well. Like there's some
good goalies in the league right now, man.
There are like a good number. It's the haves and have-nots though. That's the problem with goaltending. Either you got it and you got yourself a good one, or it's very middling. Like there's probably
don't I know?
Exactly. I'm in the same boat here in Toronto. Trust me. But it's either you've got one of those 7, maybe 8 goalies who you can rely on to be a starter through and through, and be a top tier netminder, or it's you're rolling the dice every game. You never know what you're going to get from that goaltender. So Shesterkin, though, yes, tough start to the year for him, but since the All-Star break, he's been unbelievable, which is a big reason why the Rangers are a team that, they're going to be scary. Like, they made some additions that didn't make massive ones, but they brought in some depth pieces to try and help bolster that team. I think the Rangers are going to be a squad to be reckoned with come springtime. And if Igor Shesterkin is playing at this level, whew, that's going to be tough to beat.
I knew he'd been good since the All-Star game. I didn't know he'd been this good. He's 9-1-1 with a
Yeah.
.951 save percentage. All those numbers tops in the National Hockey League. All right,
3
on the other
shutouts.
side, go ahead.
3 shutouts as well.
Yeah, not bad. After the break, we'll get into the wild card race and which Eastern team ascended the Stanley Cup odds the most after an active trade deadline. That's all next. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. We're past the halfway mark of the season, and if you're an NHL fan, you're licking your chops. The best 2 weeks of the season are coming up, the first round of the playoffs. But regardless of where your team is in the standings right now, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in a daily fantasy hockey contest. I always go with the big dogs, the Connor McDavids of the world, the Nikita Kucherovs, the Matthew Tkachuk, the way he's playing since the calendar flipped to 2024. I'm all about getting the right guys so that they can record more than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, and then you can also do goalies with saves, but there's also things like plus minus, more or less, but I'm a more guy. So to win 100 times your bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your pick so you can win big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability.
Today's show is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home that winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
All right, welcome back. Locked On NHL. I'm Ross Levitan from Locked On Senators. That's Mike DiStefano. You can find him over at Locked On Maple Leafs. A reminder, too, MLB season is coming up soon, and Locked On MLB will have their season preview on Locked On Sports today. Make sure you're dialed in for all the major league coverage this spring. Mikey, I have this theory, and I want your thoughts on it.
Okay.
I'm planning on betting responsibly 1 unit against the Chicago White Sox every single game this season. Do you think at the end of it, despite them always being the underdog, so you won't actually make that much on each game that they lose, do you think that I will be up by using that strategy?
Probably.
I'm going to try. I'm going to keep track of it too, and I'll let you know in a couple months. I'll let you know where we're at with that. But you can also make a ton of money betting against the Detroit Red Wings these days.
Sure can.
0-6. And our friends over at Locked On Red Wings will be quick to tell you that 6 games ago, they soiled an original 6 jersey. They put a garbage waste disposal company on their jersey, and the hockey gods, not happy.
Can we get viz of this? Do we got viz of this? Can we get a pick to
I don't want our show to go to heck because that we're showing this logo.
I don't know. Why would you get a garbage company, like literally a garbage waste company on your jersey? One of the most sacred jerseys in all of hockey at that, like the classic Red Wings sweater, but that's besides the point. Is that the reason for why they've lost 6 in a row? I guess because now they're playing like the logo, like what they look like, garbage. Yeah, they're in trouble, man. Like this is a team that, and prior to this, they were on like a 5-game winning streak. Like they were feeling good. Prior to this losing skid, they had themselves like a 6-point buffer between them and the next team in the playoffs. And now all of a sudden they find themselves on the outside looking in when they woke up this Wednesday morning because they lost 7-3 to the Buffalo Sabres and now have a worse win percentage than the New York Islanders, who now have claimed that second wild card spot. So the Red Wings are in trouble, man, and they've got to figure it out real quick. DeBrincat, your boy, Alex DeBrincat, he's got just 1 point in these 6 games. Like, he's not doing anything himself either. So, yeah, this team is definitely struggling. They can't get a save. They're not scoring the way that they need to be. Let's also, like, Dylan Larkin's been out. Like, that's a massive reason for it. They're missing their captain and, one of their best players. And any team who loses their best player is going to struggle. But man, this is not the time for them to be going into a 6-game skid like this. They're going to be in trouble here.
I think they are in trouble because they're already at a
Yeah.
point where their lead has evaporated. They haven't been able to extend the gap between the New York Islanders. Like, ironically, they have more wins than the Islanders, but the Islanders have been overtime loss merchants all season. And this is kind of a point where now they're starting to turn it on and get 2 points in a lot of games. So I think that they're in an interesting predicament themselves. Next 2 games, I might go so far as saying the next 5 games. Yeah, 5 games will define the Detroit Red Wings season. Home to Arizona and Buffalo, at Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh, and then home to Columbus and the New York Islanders. That's their season.
Those are winnable games, very winnable games. And then obviously you've got the Islanders who you're chasing now. So you got to make sure you grab 2 points off that team in regulation. And even Buffalo's not out of it, Ross. Like that win last night against Detroit, I don't think that they're completely out of it. They're only 5 points back of the Islanders and the Red Wings now. I mean, the Flyers could also fall out of it potentially, but
games in hand too, right?
No, they've played more games. So they've played 66 games, Detroit 65, the Islanders 64. So the games in hand doesn't help them. But that
helps Washington. Sabres, I got mixed up. Washington's got the games in hand right now.
Washington does, yeah. They've got games in hand. But the Sabres, like they play the Islanders. Their next game, they just beat Detroit, picked up 2 points off them, and now they got the Islanders. So if they can win this next game against the Islanders, all of a sudden they're sitting there at 69 points. They're only 3 points shy of these 2 teams. So the Buffalo Sabres, who are getting goaltending from Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Bowen Byram has been amazing since he's got there. He's got like 3 or 4 goals since he's got there as a blue liner. It seemed to have kind of like ignited this team. They blew out Detroit 7-3 last night. They're not completely out of it here. So it's going to be an interesting race down the stretch. I think at this point, I don't know. I feel safe to say Tampa should be able to solidify themselves a spot, but then again, they're only 2 points up on the Detroit and New York. I guess both those teams could get in there, but those final couple of spots in the East, it's going to be a dogfight down this final stretch here.
Well, let's go through it and say in or out as we enter the final 20 games. Are they in or out of the race? Let's start at the bottom. The Columbus Blue Jackets, who sit 18 points out.
Yeah, they're out. Ross.
The Ottawa Senators that sit 16 points out, but the Sens have 1 game in hand.
Yeah, remember when they had 9 games in hand?
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah, out.
Montreal Canadiens are 12 points out, and they've played 1 more game than the Islanders.
Out.
Okay, this is where it starts to get interesting. The Pittsburgh Penguins, who we're going to touch on more in our third segment today, they're 7 points out right now. Same amount of games played as the Islanders, but they've lost 6 straight games.
I think the Penguins are out.
I
I
think
think
they
they're
are
out of. I
so
mean,
done.
you look at what they did at the deadline. They told you that they're bowing out by moving on from Gensel, so they're out.
This might be the toughest stretch of Sidney Crosby's season, career, by the way. 6 games, 1 assist, no goals, minus 11 during
Oof,
this stretch.
that's not
The
good.
New Jersey Devils switched coaches, but the results have been the same. The New Jersey Devils currently sit 6 points out of a playoff spot.
They're still in it. They're still
Okay.
in it. I'll say
Okay.
they're in it.
So
If I
that's
had
where you're
to,
drawing the line. But
I
the
think that's
Penguins,
where I. Yeah, I think that's
Penguins
where
and
I draw the
Devils
line.
have the same amount of points percentage right now.
I know, but I mean, the Penguins were sellers at the deadline, and the
Yeah.
Devils. I mean, yeah, they got rid of Tyler Toffoli, but they at least changed their goaltending. They got something different in there. They changed their coach. Like, there's still a chance. Like, if this Devils team rips off like 5 wins in a row, which they're capable of, the skill set that they have, the players that they have are capable of winning 5 games straight. They're totally right back in this thing, and they're capable of doing that. I don't know if Pittsburgh is capable of that at this point, the way that they're playing hockey right now. So that's kind of why yes, they're similar in points, but I just think the Devils are a better team and have more capabilities of producing points down the stretch than Pittsburgh.
Devils have to make it start right now because their schedule is
Yeah.
tough right now. At Dallas, at Arizona, at Vegas, and then they come home and play Pittsburgh, so that could be a big game. And then they have Winnipeg at home, Ottawa at home, and then after that, 7 of their final 10 games are on the road. So they're going to have to start getting some wins in an absolute hurry. So if you didn't hear your team there, congrats. You're still in the wild card race if you're looking at the likes of obviously Tampa, who sits in the first wild card spot, the Islanders in the second, tied with the Red Wings, but the Isles have a game in hand, Washington, and then I'll probably say Buffalo and New Jersey are out of it, but for the sake of a good race with 20 games left, things can obviously change in a hurry. So we will keep those two as teams in the hunt, as they like to put on those NFL graphics come the last couple of weeks.
Well, I think if you also look at, I mean, we're talking wild card, but that third spot in the Metro, I think, is still open. Like,
Yep, but Philly
Philly
doesn't
only.
want to. They don't want to give it up.
I know, but you look at what they may not want to give it up, but like, it's a team that's been playing 500 hockey and kind of hovering for the last month. I think that the Islanders, who are playing at a much better level at this point, they've won 7 of their last 10 games. They're only 4 points back, and they have 2 games in hand. So they win both of those games. All of a sudden, they leapfrog the Philadelphia Flyers. So I could totally see a situation here where the Islanders end up with that third spot, and then the Flyers are competing with the Detroits and Tampas and Washingtons and Buffaloes of the world, trying to hang on to one of those final wild card spots. I think that third spot in the Metro is still very much up for grabs.
We'll have more of this conversation after a quick word. You're listening to Locked On NHL, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at FanDuel. Say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of this March Madness tournament. Whether you're betting on a big upset or a 1 seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That is $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, player props. You can even bet on who's going to win it all. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. You can also check out all the great odds they have on NHL futures. All right, welcome back. Locked On NHL. I'm Ross Levitan over at Locked On Ottawa Senators. That's Mike DiStefano. You can find him 5 days a week over at Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs. We got local experts on the biggest stories. We are your team every day.
I got a little story. Speak of our friends at FanDuel. You want to hear a bad beat? I was our for your former colleague, my current colleague, our friend Aaron Korolnik shared this story yesterday on Overdrive. He went down to Tampa over this past weekend, and he was at the game where John Tortorella got ejected when they were taking on the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the Lightning just fed the Flyers their lunch. 7-0, I believe, was the final there. And he said that he had placed a parlay on FanDuel, and the parlay needed Kucherov to get like over 1.5 points, and then there was a couple shots, goals, whatever it was. But it ends up hitting, I think, the 6th goal of the game. Kucherov gets his second assist, and it cashes the parlay. They're partying. They go out afterwards. They're buying shots. They're celebrating. This was a nice, healthy parlay, I might add. And good old stat correction comes through. Wipes a point off, an assist off for Kucherov, and that nice parlay cash turned into a brutal bad beat.
That's tough.
Oh, they're at the bar buying shots for people, celebrating. Like, oh, this is a 5-figure win.
Yeah.
And they're out there partying. And someone pulled out the phone to just, go and check or something. I don't know. And they realized that, stat correction. One of the secondary assists was given to somebody else. Darren Radish, who actually ended up with 5 apples in that game, breaking a record.
He didn't even need it.
It was because of that.
That's awful. That is horrible. We feel for him. Hey, don't count your cash before it's in your account. That's what I'll say there.
Yeah. But so there's a little plug.
No, seriously, guys, go check out FanDuel. Bet responsibly over with our friends at FanDuel, the #1 sports book. And we also love taking a look at the long-term lines. Maybe we'll do that in the next few weeks, Mikey, because we are coming into award season where all these players are making their final push to get their hardware at the end of the season. Lots of hardware on the Pittsburgh Penguins in their locker room. When you look at 3 Norris trophies for Erik Karlsson, when you look at all the accolades that Sidney Crosby had, we'd be doing the rest of the show if I named them all off. But with all that said, they can't find ways to win. I watched their entire game last night. They lose to Ottawa 2-1 in overtime. They scored 1 goal, Mikey. It was with 10 seconds left in the game. They went 59 minutes and 50 seconds without scoring a goal on the team that allows the most goals in the National Hockey League. It's just not going their way. And you heard Sidney Crosby dejected after the Jake Gensel trade. Like, are they, to you, going to be one of the most interesting teams to watch this offseason?
Yes, they will. Because I think for the first time ever, like, there's a probability. I think it's gone from possibility to probability that Sidney Crosby is no longer a Penguin this offseason. Like, there's already the rumblings out there. There's a report that there's a trio of teams that he's thought about it. If he were to go elsewhere, it would be to, Colorado, Vancouver, or Toronto. One of those 3 teams he would consider, apparently, was a report that I had heard and read. Whether that happens, I guess, remains to be seen. But that's a team that's definitely not winning anything anytime soon. So if Sid still wants to win one more before he hangs it up, or if he wants to play with his old buddy Nate Dogg out in Colorado, I could totally see it happening this summer, man. It would have been blasphemous for me to say last year, especially the all-in move that they made. They hire Kyle Dubas. He brings in a plethora of free agents, makes a big trade to acquire Erik Karlsson. And if you look back on that trade, really all they did was they took a lot of bad contracts and bad money, and they just spent it on one guy and brought in like a good player. So it made sense. Like, I still think to this day, the trade makes sense. And it's not even like he's playing bad. It's actually just, it's unexplainable what is happening in Pittsburgh right now. And the thing that I still just can't fathom is how bad their power play has been this year. They're 29th in the league, 14.6% success rate on the power play. How is that possible when you have a team of Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, you had Jake Gensel, you've got Brian Rust, you've got Chris Letang, you've got Erik Karlsson? How the hell they can't score up by a man makes zero sense to me. And it's been a huge hindrance to them all season long.
Do you think it's almost like the Brooklyn Nets when they had those 3 superstars where it's like the old adage, there's only one ball, there's only one puck?
I don't know. I don't. Maybe,
I'm
possibly
I'm
that could
saying it
be it.
like
But
tongue in cheek, but at the same time, like it's inexplicable how they haven't been able to contribute on the power play at all. They have the 29th ranked power play in the entire National Hockey League. Chicago's got a better power play than Pittsburgh.
it's outrageous, absolutely outrageous, and it's a big reason for their downfall this year, obviously. And the team's not getting any better, man. And Sid, Malkin, Letang, even Carlson, those guys aren't getting any younger either. So I think there could be changes. I mean, what do you make of the reports of maybe a reunion with Carlson and the nation's capital?
Not on that contract. If they
You know,
want to buy him
if they
out,
eat a
well,
little, they eat a
if
little
they
bit, or it's too
no,
low.
even if they eat, like I don't want them at 5 or 6 million. I think what Ottawa needs is guys who can like move bodies in front of the net and be defensively sound. Like they're getting offense from their back end, unless we're talking like a Shabbat for Carlson trade, which would get complicated because you're giving up 5 years in age or 6 years in age. And at that point, you're like, okay, well, we got to make the money beneficial for us at the same time. So I'm curious because I do understand the connection with Daniel Alfredson here, and obviously coming home for a sense. He married a girl from Ottawa. He makes it his off-season home, but you can't be giving a 34-year-old with what, four years left at 10 million cap hit right now. It's just Ottawa's at the cap right now. Like it just makes absolutely no sense. But I will say that he is going to come. He will play in Ottawa before his career's over. I just think it's going to be after this contract. He'll sign like a 2x2, something like that, to finish his career.
Yeah, I don't think there's a chance in hell they buy this contract out. I mean, that would just be that'd be what 8 year that would be on the books as dead cap in the range of like 4-ish, 5-ish million a season. I don't know, man. That's probably one where if you can't trade it, it's
It's
he's
definitely
gonna
not going to
sink.
be this summer. I just went to the calculator. The cap hit would be 2.8 next year for Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Then the year after would be 8 million, and the year
Yeah,
after would be 10.1.
yeah, no. Like they just say you can't. If you do anything, you have to trade them at, retain as much as you can, and
Which
then
would be
try and
5
make them
million left.
right. Try and make them cheap. That's the best you could do if you were. And I think, to be honest, I mean, any team should be lining up to get Carlson at $5 million. Honestly, I do believe that any team should be willing to do that, including the
Right, but
team
he
that
has a
I cover in the Maple Leafs.
full no move clause. So
Right. So he has the right to pick and choose where he wants to go. But if he says, I want to go there, whoever that team is should probably be willing to take him on if Pittsburgh's willing to eat the full amount of that deal,
yeah.
50% of that contract.
Yeah, I'm very curious. And you think Dubas will trade with Toronto at all?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Well,
know. That's a good question. I'm
yeah,
not
we had the
too
same
sure.
discussion when Tarasenko was on the market. It's like, I don't think they're trading with Vegas after Vegas complained to the league to the point where Ottawa got nixed a first round pick. Like whatever you're offering for Tarasenko, throw in an extra first and then we'll talk. Like,
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, there were reports out there that could have been the issue with Brad Treliving when he was talking with Calgary about Tanev and Hannafin that,
right.
Toronto was getting taxed a little bit extra if they
Well,
wanted to take those players. So,
Conroy probably said, "You sewered me, man." He left them with nothing.
well,
Nothing.
I don't know.
Nothing.
Yeah, and moot points. They both got dealt. They both got traded. Toronto didn't get them. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, obviously Vegas had to get their hands on one of them, but
Dude, I'm telling you, man, that Vegas team, whoo, when they get healthy, which is
game
when, not
one.
an if. That's a when, not an if. When they get healthy, man, that's going to be a wagon. Holy smokes.
Yeah, wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. And as it stands right now, they're a wild card team, which is not how it's going to end. But to me, that is just egregious right now. Like if you're the Vancouver Canucks and you win the Western Conference, if the playoffs started today, your benefit would be getting Vegas.
Yeah, congratulations. You win the West. You get the arguable best team in the West.
In the league and
Game
the
one.
defending champs.
I was watching on Trade Center. I was doing the show live on 1050 radio, and when the trade went down for Hurdle, I literally watched the odds tumble from the Vegas was plus 1,000, and they shortened all the way to, and that was sixth best odds to win the Cup. Made the Hurdle trade, it shortened to plus 750, tied with Edmonton and Florida for the front runner to win the Cup.
Wow.
From sixth to co-favorites.
Yeah, I mean,
because of one trade.
I believe it. We'll pass it over to Power Rankings Thursday with that, but like, there's a lot of great teams out West. That's gonna be the first round's gonna be so phenomenal. I mean, we're likely gonna get Boston, Toronto as well, which is gonna be great. It'd be also pretty cool if we were somehow able to get Islanders, Rangers, even Tampa Rangers would be a great playoff series, I think. So best 2 weeks of the year on the NHL calendar. We're like a month away. The regular season ends in exactly a month, and then we'll be able to get you playoff hockey. Not in Ottawa, but I'll be dialed in here with Locked On NHL. That's Mike DiStefano. I'm Ross Levitan. The boys will be back tomorrow for Power Rankings Thursday on Locked On NHL. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.